I got the $500 million check and the positive pregnancy test on the same Tuesday morning in March. What happened next would teach me that some signatures change everything. The check came first. "Marty, $500 million, he said. "Your bonus for closing the Meridian acquisition. Largest deal in Texas venture capital history. Largest bonus ever paid to a woman in this state."
Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching.
I stared at the number. The zeros blurred together. I had spent 18 months on that deal. 18 months of 14-hour days, of missed dinners, of weekends buried in due diligence reports. 18 months of Derek complaining that I was never home, that I cared more about work than about him. Now it was done, and I was holding more money than most people could imagine in a lifetime. "You earned this, Victoria." Martin squeezed my shoulder. "Every penny." The pregnancy test came 2 hours later. I had been feeling strange for weeks, tired in ways that coffee couldn't fix, nauseous in the mornings, my body doing things I didn't recognize. I had bought the test on impulse, not really believing, just wanting to rule it out. 2 pink lines. I sat on the bathroom floor of my office, phone in one hand, test in the other, crying in a way I hadn't cried since I was a child. Happy tears. Terrified tears. The kind of tears that come when your whole life shifts in a single moment. Derek and I had been trying for 3 years. Fertility treatments, disappointments, fights that ended in silence. He had started saying maybe it wasn't meant to be. Maybe we should accept that children weren't in our future. But here it was. Life growing inside me on the same day I had been handed more money than I could ever spend. I wanted to tell him in person. I stopped at his favorite wine shop and bought the 2015 Chateau Margaux he had been talking about for months. I picked up flowers. I drove home in the middle of the afternoon, something I never did, rehearsing how I would say it. The bags were the first thing I saw. My bags. 4 suitcases I recognized from our closet, sitting on the sidewalk in front of our house. My clothes spilling out of one where the zipper had burst. For a moment, I thought we had been robbed, that someone had broken in and thrown my things out. It made no sense, but nothing else made sense either. Then I heard the laughter. It came from inside, through the open window of our living room. Derek's laugh, the one he used at parties when he wanted to seem charming. And a woman's voice I knew, a voice I had heard every day for 2 years in my own office, Courtney Blake, my executive assistant. I walked to the window like I was underwater. Every step took a lifetime. Through the glass, I could see them on the couch, Derek's arm around her shoulders, her hand on his chest. They were watching something on his phone, laughing at whatever they saw, and sitting in the armchair across from them, a glass of wine in her hand, was Patricia Sanders, my mother-in-law. She was smiling, not the tight, polite smile she showed me at family dinners. A real smile. Genuine pleasure. "She actually believed you loved her," Patricia said. "All these years. It's almost impressive how naive she was." "Naive and profitable," Derek replied. "Did you see the news today? 500 million. We timed this perfectly." "Of course we did." Patricia's voice was smug. "I didn't spend 8 years planning this to miss the payout. 8 years. I had been married to Derek for 7 years, dated him for 18 months before that, which meant Patricia had been planning this before I ever met her son. I didn't knock. I opened the door and walked into my own living room. The 3 of them froze. Derek's face went through a series of expressions I had never seen before. Surprise? Annoyance? And then something that looked almost like relief. "Victoria." He didn't stand up, didn't remove his arm from around Courtney. "You're home early? My bags are on the sidewalk." "Yes, we need to talk about that." Patricia set down her wine glass and rose to her feet. She was 65 years old, perfectly preserved, wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her smile never wavered. "Darling," she said, "you didn't really think Derek married you for love, did you?" I couldn't speak. The pregnancy test was in my purse. The champagne was in my car. The check for $500 million was in my bag on the sidewalk. "My son needed capital," Patricia continued. as if explaining something obvious to a slow child. Your career was promising. Your work ethic was exceptional. You were exactly the kind of investment we were looking for. Investment? A partnership. Derek provides the charm, the social connections, the family name. You provide the income. It worked beautifully for 7 years. She glanced at Courtney, who had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. But now that the big payout has arrived, the partnership has served its purpose. Derek finally stood. He was still handsome. Still the man I had fallen in love with at that charity gala 8 years ago. Still the man who had held my hand when my father died. Who had danced with me at our wedding while promising to love me forever. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Vicky. His voice was gentle, almost kind. My lawyer will be in touch. We'll split everything 50-50. You'll barely notice the difference. 50-50, half of $500 million. $250 million for a man who had never loved me. I looked around the room, at the house I had bought, the furniture I had chosen, the art I had collected, the life I had built while thinking I was building it with someone. On the side table next to Derek's whiskey glass sat a pen, a Mont Blanc Meisterstück, black with gold trim. I had given it to him on our first anniversary. I had watched him sign our mortgage with it, our car loans, birthday cards, the anniversary card last month that said, "Forever yours." I walked over and picked it up. "That's mine," Derek said. "I gave it to you, which makes it mine." I looked at him, at Courtney, at Patricia. 3 people who had built their happiness on my ruin. 3 people who thought I was defeated. "You're right," I said quietly. "You're absolutely right." I put the pen in my purse. Then I turned and walked out the door, past my bags on the sidewalk, to my car still running in the driveway. I didn't look back. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't cry until I was 3 miles away, pulled over on the side of the road, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. But even then, even in the deepest moment of my devastation, a small cold voice in the back of my mind was already calculating. 8 years. They had been planning this for 8 years. I had built a career destroying companies that thought they were untouchable. I had spent 15 years learning how to find weaknesses, exploit vulnerabilities, execute hostile takeovers so precise they were taught in business schools. Derek thought he had married a victim. He had married a predator, and he had no idea what was coming. I looked at the pen in my purse, the pen that had signed so many promises, the pen that he thought was his. So then, I picked up the pen. And I started writing a different ending. The hotel room cost $1,200 a night. I didn't notice. I didn't notice much of anything for the... I held my phone in my hand for hours, waiting for Derek to call and say it was a misunderstanding, a cruel joke, anything other than what it was. He never called. On the 4th day, Samantha Rhodes kicked down my door. Not literally, but close. She bribed the front desk clerk, got a key, and walked into my room at 7 a.m. with coffee, pastries, and the look of a woman who had seen her best friend broken before and refused to let it happen again. "You have 48 hours, she said, setting breakfast on the bed. "To mourn, to cry, to feel whatever you need to feel. Then we go to war." Sam had been my best friend since Stanford Law. She had chosen journalism instead of corporate law, becoming one of the most feared investigative reporters in Texas. She had broken 3 governors, 2 senators, and countless corporate executives. She had also been suspicious of Derek from the day I introduced them. "He's too perfect," she had said at my engagement party. "Nobody's that charming without hiding something." I had laughed it off, told her she was paranoid, begged her to give him a chance. Now she sat on the edge of my bed, holding my hand, not saying "I told you so." "Tell me everything," she said. I told her. The bags, Courtney, Patricia, the 8 years, the plan to take half my bonus, everything except the pregnancy. I wasn't ready to say that out loud yet. When I finished, Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone. "I've already started digging." "You what?" "You went dark for 3 days. I knew something was wrong. So I made some calls." She scrolled through her notes. Derek Michael Sanders, 38 years old, MBA from Rice University, graduated in the bottom third of his class. Worked for his mother's investment firm for 6 years before getting fired for incompetence. No other employment history. Married you 18 months later. His mother fired him? Officially, he left to pursue other opportunities. Unofficially, he lost $3 million on a deal his mother had explicitly told him not to make. Sam looked at me. $3 million. At the time, the Sanders family was worth about $40 million total. Derek nearly bankrupted them. I thought about our early dates. Derek had been attentive, romantic, seemingly unbothered by my long hours at work. He had said he was taking time off to figure out his next move. I had admired his confidence, his willingness to step back from the family business to find his own path. I had been an idiot. It gets worse, Sam continued. I pulled Patricia Sanders' financial records. Don't ask how. I didn't ask. The Sanders family was broke by 2015. Like, mansion mortgaged, selling jewelry broke. Then Patricia took out a series of loans against her remaining assets. Large loans. Starting exactly 8 months before you met Derek at that charity gala. 8 months. Enough time to research me, to find out where I would be, to engineer an accidental meeting. The charity gala was a setup? The charity gala was hosted by Patricia Sanders as chair of the planning committee. You were invited because your firm had donated. Derek was there because his mother told him to be there. Sam pulled up a photograph on her phone. I found this in the Houston Chronicle Society pages. The gala. Look at the background. In the photo, I was laughing at something Derek had said. It was our first conversation, the moment I fell for his charm. And in the background, barely visible, Patricia Sanders was watching us with a small, satisfied smile. They hunted you, Victoria. Like a business deal, Patricia identified you as a target, positioned Derek to make contact, and spent the next 8 years waiting for the payout. I felt sick, actually sick, not just pregnancy sick. I barely made it to the bathroom before vomiting. When I came back, Sam had a glass of water waiting. There's more, she said gently, but you need to know this. Courtney Blake started working for you 3 months after someone from Patricia Sanders' office made a phone call to your HR department. The reference came from a company that doesn't exist. Courtney, my assistant, the woman I had trusted with my calendar, my email, my travel arrangements, the woman who knew every detail of my professional life. She was a spy. For 2 years at least, maybe longer. Every deal you worked on, every meeting you took, Courtney reported back to Patricia. They knew exactly when the Meridian deal would close. They knew exactly when you'd get your bonus. They timed the divorce filing down to the day. I sat on the edge of the bed, processing. The scale of the deception was staggering. Not a moment of weakness or a sudden affair. A years-long conspiracy designed from the beginning to extract maximum value from my life. One more thing. Sam handed me her phone. I found these emails between Derek and Courtney, dating back 18 months. They've been sleeping together since before she even started working for you. But look at the language. I scrolled through the messages. They were romantic, yes, explicit in places. But they also discussed timelines, milestones. When V closes the big deal. When we file. When Mom says it's time. This isn't an affair, I said slowly. This is a business arrangement. Courtney isn't in love with Derek. She's an investor. Patricia promised her a cut of the divorce settlement. $20 million, according to one of these emails. Sam took back her phone. They plan to split your $500 million 3 ways. Derek gets half. Courtney gets $20 million from Derek's share. Patricia gets the rest for managing the operation. I thought about all the times I had trusted Courtney, the confidential documents she had handled, the private conversations she had overheard, the tender moments with Derek that she had witnessed while secretly sleeping with him. 2 years. She had been in my life for 2 years, smiling at me every morning, bringing me coffee, telling me I was her mentor and inspiration, while reporting my every move to the people planning to destroy me. What about the divorce itself? I asked. What's their legal strategy? Sam hesitated. That's where it gets really ugly. She pulled up a document on her phone, a prenuptial agreement, my signature at the bottom, dated 3 days before our wedding. I never signed a prenup. I know. I was at your wedding. You told me Derek said he didn't believe in them, that love shouldn't have conditions. Sam zoomed in on the signature. This is a forgery. A good one, but still a forgery. They're planning to present it in court as evidence that you agreed to forfeit most of your assets in case of divorce. I stared at my own fake signature, at the document that would supposedly give Derek the right to take everything I had earned. The prenup specifies that in case of divorce, the higher-earning spouse pays the other 80% of their assets accumulated during the marriage. Since Derek has no income and hasn't worked in 7 years, that means you owe him $400 million. $400 million. Not $250. $400. They hadn't been planning to split my bonus. They had been planning to take almost everything. Can they actually do this? If the forgery holds up, yes. Texas is a community property state, but prenups supersede that. The document looks legitimate. It has a notary stamp, witness signatures, the works. Unless you can prove it's fake. I thought about fighting this in court. Endless depositions. Expert witnesses debating signatures. Derek and Patricia lying under oath while Courtney corroborated everything. Years of litigation while they drained my accounts with legal fees. They had planned this perfectly. Every angle covered. Every weakness exploited. Almost every weakness. Sam, I said slowly, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to find out everything about the Sanders family finances. Everything. Every debt, every loan, every asset, every liability. I need to know exactly how much they owe and to whom. Sam studied my face. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that Derek married me because he thought I was an easy mark. A workaholic who was too busy building a career to notice she was being robbed. I picked up the Mont Blanc pen from the nightstand. But I didn't get where I am by being easy. Victoria, what are you going to do? I thought about 15 years of hostile takeovers, 15 years of identifying weak companies, buying their debt, seizing their assets, 15 years of destroying people who thought they were untouchable. I'm going to do what I do best, I said. I'm going to acquire them. The first ultrasound was on a Thursday. I went alone. The clinic was in a medical building far from downtown, far from anyone who might recognize me. The waiting room was full of couples holding hands, women glowing with anticipation, fathers-to-be nervously flipping through parenting magazines. I sat in the corner, wearing sunglasses indoors, trying to disappear. When they called my name, I followed the technician to a dim room with a monitor and a table covered in paper. She was young, maybe 25, with a cheerful voice that made my chest tight. Is Dad going to join us today? No. Oh, is he stuck at work? We can FaceTime him if you want. Lots of dads. He's not coming. Something in my voice made her stop talking. She applied the gel to my stomach, moved the wand, and turned the monitor toward me. There it was. A tiny blob of light. A flutter of movement. A heartbeat. 156 beats per minute, displayed in green numbers in the corner of the screen. 8 weeks, the technician said softly. Everything looks perfect. I had thought I was done crying. I was wrong. The tears came silently, streaming down my face while I stared at the screen, at the life growing inside me that had no idea its father was a monster, and its mother was about to become one. The technician handed me tissues. She didn't ask questions. She had probably seen this before. Women alone in this room for all kinds of reasons, happy and sad and complicated. I left with 3 printed images of the ultrasound and a due date in October. Back in my hotel room, I pinned the images above the desk where I had been working 18-hour days since Sam's visit. Around them were charts, documents, financial records. The anatomy of the Sanders family laid out like a patient on an operating table, and the patient was dying. The Sanders family was broke. Not just struggling, completely, catastrophically broke. The $40 million they had been worth when Derek nearly bankrupted them had dwindled to less than $2 million in actual assets. Everything else was debt. Patricia had taken out loans against the family mansion, $3.2 million, currently in default. Derek had personal debts totaling $800,000, mostly gambling losses at casinos in Louisiana that his mother didn't know about. The family investment firm, Sanders Capital Partners, had lost money for 6 consecutive years and was 1 bad quarter away from insolvency. And then there was the mortgage on the house where Derek and Courtney were living, the house that used to be mine. The house I had bought with my earnings while Derek contributed nothing. It was in Derek's name. I hadn't thought about it at the time. He had said something about tax benefits, about protecting my assets in case of lawsuits related to my work. I had signed the papers without reading them, trusting him. The mortgage was $1.8 million. Derek had missed the last 3 payments. The bank was about to foreclose. I called Martin Cole at 11 p.m. Victoria. His voice was alert despite the hour. Martin had been doing this for 40 years. He knew that late-night calls from clients usually meant something interesting. How are you holding up? I need your help. Anything. I want to buy the Sanders family. There was a pause. I could picture him sitting up in bed, reaching for his glasses, his mind already racing through possibilities. Define buy. Every debt they owe, every mortgage, every loan, every asset that can be acquired. I want to own them completely. That's not an acquisition, Victoria. That's a siege. Yes. Another pause. Then, how liquid are you? I have $500 million in my account as of yesterday. Martin whistled softly. The Meridian bonus. The Meridian bonus. And I'm prepared to use every cent of it to destroy the people who tried to destroy me. Tell me what happened. I told him. All of it this time, including the pregnancy. When I finished, the silence on the other end of the phone was heavy with the kind of anger that Martin Cole rarely showed. The prenup forgery alone is criminal fraud, he said finally. We could have Derek arrested tomorrow. I don't want him arrested. Arrested means lawyers, trials, appeals. Arrested means years of my life spent in courtrooms while he gets 3 meals a day and a bed to sleep in. I looked at the ultrasound images on my wall. I want him to feel what he did to me. I want him to lose everything while I watch. That's revenge, Victoria. Not justice. Maybe, but it's also good business. I heard Martin chuckle despite himself. Walk me through your thinking. The Sanders family finances are a house of cards. Patricia took out loans to fund the operation against me, assuming they'd be paid back when Derek got his share of my money. Those loans are coming due. If someone were to purchase that debt and call it in immediately, she'd have no way to pay. She'd lose the mansion. She'd lose everything. The mansion, the investment firm, the family name. All of it would go to whoever holds the debt. I paused. Me. What about Derek? Derek has $800,000 in gambling debts to some very unpleasant people. I'm sure they'd be willing to sell that paper at a discount to someone who could guarantee payment. And there's the house, my house, which is about to be foreclosed. If I buy the mortgage from the bank, I can evict him whenever I want. And Courtney? Courtney has a lifestyle funded by credit cards and optimism. Her apartment lease is owned by a holding company that's 3 weeks away from bankruptcy. The company is for sale. I can buy it by Friday. Martin was quiet for a long moment. I could hear him thinking, running through scenarios, looking for flaws. This is possible, he said finally. All of it. Legal. Clean. Devastating. Another pause. Victoria, are you sure you want to do this? Once you start, you can't stop. These people will know you're coming for them, and they'll fight back with everything they have. I looked at the ultrasound images again, at the tiny flutter of life that didn't know yet how cruel the world could be. They spent 8 years planning to take everything from me, I said. 8 years of lies and manipulation and betrayal. They thought I was weak. They thought I was easy prey. I picked up the Mont Blanc pen from the desk. The pen that had started all of this. The pen that would sign the documents that ended it. They were wrong. When do you want to start? Yesterday. But tomorrow will do. After I hung up, I stood at the window for a long time, looking out at the Houston skyline. Somewhere out there, Derek was sleeping in my house with my former assistant, dreaming of the $400 million he thought was coming to him. He had no idea that I was coming for him first. I opened my laptop and began to work. By 3 a.m., I had identified every creditor the Sanders family owed money to. Banks, private lenders, credit card companies, the mortgage holder on my former house. 23 separate entities holding a combined $7.4 million in Sanders family debt. I drafted purchase offers for all of them. By 5 a.m., I had outlined a strategy for acquiring 60% of Sanders Capital Partners, the family investment firm. The company was publicly traded but thinly held. Patricia owned 40%. The remaining shares were scattered among institutional investors who would be happy to sell at a premium. By 7 a.m., I was on the phone with a real estate attorney, arranging to purchase the holding company that owned Courtney's apartment building. By 9 a.m., I was meeting with Martin Cole in his office, signing the first of many documents. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, sliding a stack of papers across his desk. "Once these are filed, there's no going back." I picked up the pen. The Mont Blanc, Derek's pen. My pen now. I've been 45 days of lawyers and accountants and shell companies with names like Horizon Partners LLC and Meridian Asset Holdings. 45 days of watching the Sanders family go about their lives, completely unaware that every piece of their existence was being purchased by the woman they had tried to destroy. I kept a ledger. Day 1. Purchased Derek's gambling debt from Louisiana Casino Consortium. $800,000 at 60 cents on the dollar. Total spent, $480,000. Day 3. Purchased Patricia Sanders' personal line of credit from First Houston Bank. $1.2 million at 75 cents on the dollar. Total spent, $900,000. Day 7. Purchased holding company that owns Courtney Blake's apartment building. $3.4 million. Acquired all lease agreements, including hers. Day 12. Purchased mortgage on Sanders family mansion from Wells Fargo. $3.2 million at par value, with banks' grateful cooperation. They were happy to get a problem loan off their books. Day 15. Acquired first block of Sanders Capital Partners shares. 12% of company. Total spent, $4.8 million. Day 23. Purchased mortgage on my former house from Chase Bank. $1.8 million. Derek had missed 4 payments by then. Foreclosure was already in process. I just changed the beneficiary. Day 31. Acquired second block of Sanders Capital Partners shares. Now owned 35%. Large enough to demand a board seat. Day 38. Purchased Patricia's remaining personal loans, her car, her jewelry, her credit cards, all of it, consolidated under a single holding company that I controlled completely. Day 45. Final acquisition. 25% of Sanders Capital Partners from an institutional investor who was delighted to sell at a 30% premium. Combined with my earlier purchases, I now owned 60% of the company. Controlling interest. I kept the ledger on my desk next to the ultrasound images. The baby was growing. 16 weeks now. The doctors said everything was healthy. I had started showing just a little, a curve beneath my clothes that no one else would notice but that I felt every moment of every day. I was building 2 things at once. A life inside me, and a weapon outside. The hardest part was the waiting. Every instinct told me to move faster, to call in the debts immediately, to watch them scramble and panic and beg. But Martin had counseled patience. "Let the pieces settle," he said during one of our daily calls. "Let them get comfortable. Let them think the threat has passed." And they did get comfortable. Sam kept me updated on their movements. Derek had filed for divorce formally, citing irreconcilable differences. The forged prenup was attached to the filing. His lawyer had sent me a settlement proposal, $400 million as expected, plus the house, plus ongoing alimony of $50,000 per month. I didn't respond. Derek apparently took this as a sign of weakness. According to Sam, he had been telling people at parties that his soon-to-be ex-wife was devastated and hiding somewhere licking her wounds. He joked about how easy it had been to manipulate me. Patricia was planning a victory celebration. She had booked the ballroom at the Houston Club for a family reunion that was really a chance to gloat. Invitations had been sent. Courtney was on the guest list as Derek's companion. Let them celebrate. Let them think they had won. The notifications were scheduled for the same day as their party. I had Martin prepare the letters personally. Formal notice of debt collection. 30 days to pay in full or face legal action. Copies sent to Derek's gambling creditors, Patricia's banks, the mortgage holders on both properties. The letters went out on a Tuesday morning. The party was Tuesday night. I didn't attend, of course, but Sam did, pretending to cover it for a society column piece. She called me from the bathroom halfway through the evening. "You should see their faces," she whispered. "Derek got the letter an hour ago. He turned white. Patricia got hers during the appetizer course. She had to excuse herself and hasn't come back. And Courtney? Courtney got a notice that her lease is being terminated. 30 days to vacate. She's in the corner crying and Derek is pretending not to know her." I smiled for the first time in weeks. "How's the party?" "Dying a slow, painful death. The guests can tell something's wrong. Patricia's assistant just announced that Mrs. Sanders is unwell and the event is ending early." "Perfect. Victoria, they have no idea it's you. They think it's just bad luck. A coincidence. They're talking about hiring lawyers, fighting back, finding whoever's behind this. Let them look. They won't find anything until I'm ready." The next morning, Derek's lawyer called mine with a revised settlement offer. $300 million instead of $400 million. A good faith gesture, he called it. Martin declined without comment. 3 days later, another offer. $200 million declined. A week after that, Derek called me directly. The first time I had heard his voice since leaving our house. "Vicky." He sounded tired, scared. "Vicky, we need to talk." I let him speak. "I don't know what's happening. Everything is falling apart. Mom's creditors are calling every hour. The house is being foreclosed. Someone bought my gambling debt and they're threatening to break my legs." His voice cracked. "I know things ended badly between us, but please, if you know anything about this, if there's any way you can help." He was begging. The man who had spent 8 years manipulating me was begging for my help. "Derek," I said calmly, "I'm going to give you some advice. Yes, anything. Check who owns your debt." I hung up. It took him 2 days to connect the dots. 2 days of lawyers and research and growing horror as he realized that every creditor threatening him was actually a shell company owned by the same entity. An entity controlled by his wife. When he finally understood, he showed up at the office of Victory Capital, demanding to see me. Security escorted him out. He stood on the sidewalk screaming my name until the police came. That night, Patricia Sanders called Martin Cole. "Tell Victoria we need to meet," she said, her voice brittle with controlled fury. "Tell her I understand now. Tell her I'm willing to negotiate." Martin relayed the message. I sent back a single sentence. "Shareholders meeting. Sanders Capital Partners. Friday at 9 a.m. Attendance is mandatory." When Friday came, I was ready. I arrived at the Sanders Capital Partners headquarters at 8:30 a.m. The building was a modest office tower in the Galleria area, nothing like the gleaming skyscrapers where I usually worked. The receptionist looked nervous when I gave my name. "Sanders asked me to put you in the main conference room," she said. "She'll be with you shortly." "I don't think so." I smiled. "I'm the majority shareholder. I'll be running this meeting." I walked past her into the conference room and took the seat at the head of the table. The seat Patricia had occupied for 30 years. The seat she thought was hers by right. The chair was leather, high-backed, facing away from the door. I turned it toward the window. And I waited. At 9 a.m. exactly, the door opened. I heard them enter. Derek first, his breathing heavy with anxiety. Then Patricia, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Then Courtney, trailing behind like an afterthought. "Where is she?" Derek asked. "The chair," Patricia said quietly. "She's in the chair." I let the moment stretch. 5 seconds. Enough time for them to understand that everything had changed. Then I turned around. Derek screamed. It wasn't a word. Just a sound of pure animal terror ripped from somewhere deep in his chest. Patricia didn't scream. Her face simply went gray, all color draining away, as the full scope of her failure became clear. And Courtney simply started to cry. "Good morning," I said. "Please sit down." I gestured Ty. Derek practically collapsed into his chair, his face the color of old paper. Patricia lowered herself with careful dignity, still trying to maintain control even as her world crumbled. Courtney perched on the edge of her seat, eyes darting toward the door like a trapped animal. I let the silence stretch. The conference room was glass on 3 sides, overlooking the Houston skyline. Morning light poured in, illuminating every flicker of emotion on their faces. Behind me on the table was a single folder, thin, black, containing everything I needed. "Victoria," Patricia said finally, her voice steady despite everything. "I underestimated you." "Yes, you did. This is quite a performance. Buying up our debts. Taking control of the company. Very dramatic." She folded her hands on the table. "But surely you realize that revenge is expensive. We can make a deal. Something reasonable. Something that benefits everyone." "Define reasonable." "You keep your bonus. We forget about the prenup. Derek gets nothing. We all walk away." She leaned forward. "Clean break. No more fighting. It's over." I opened the folder. "Do you know what's in here, Patricia?" She didn't answer. 8 years of evidence. Bank records showing payments from your accounts to Courtney's starting 3 months before she applied to work for me. Emails between you and Derek discussing the Victoria project, dating back to before we met. The original prenup you forged with my signature, along with analysis from 3 separate forensic experts confirming it's fake. I pulled out a stack of photographs. Pictures from the charity gala where Derek accidentally met me. You're in every single one, watching, directing. Patricia's composure cracked slightly. "Those don't prove anything. Individually, maybe not. But I also have testimony." I pulled out another document. Courtney Blake gave a sworn deposition yesterday. In exchange for not pressing charges for corporate espionage and fraud, she detailed the entire operation, every meeting, every payment, every instruction you gave her. Courtney made a small sound. Derek turned to stare at her. "You talked?" His voice was incredulous. "You actually—" "They were going to have me arrested," Courtney said, her voice high and thin. "I could go to prison for years, all because of your mother's plan." "My mother's plan? You were in on it from the beginning." "Your mother recruited me. She said it would be easy money. Watch Victoria, report back, wait for the payout. Nobody mentioned prison." "Nobody's going to prison," Patricia snapped. "Victoria is bluffing. She won't go public with any of this. The scandal would damage her reputation, too." I smiled. "You're right, Patricia. I don't want a scandal. That's why we're going to handle this privately." I pulled the final document from the folder. "This is a contract. It contains a full written confession of everything you've done. The fraud, the forgery, the corporate espionage, the 8-year conspiracy to defraud me of my assets. You're going to sign it, all 3 of you." "And if we refuse?" "Then I release everything. The documents, the deposition, the forensic analysis. I've already prepared the story for the Houston Chronicle. Sam Rhodes is eager to write it. I've notified the Harris County District Attorney's Office, and I've sent copies to the Texas Bar Association, which will be very interested in the lawyers who helped you forge that prenup." I paused. "You'll be publicly destroyed, criminally charged, and professionally ruined. All of you. You can't prove—" "Patricia," I leaned forward. "I've spent 15 years acquiring companies run by people who thought they were smarter than everyone else. I've dismantled corporations worth billions. I've put executives in prison and bankrupted dynasties. Do you really think I didn't plan this down to the last detail?" She had no response. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign this confession. In exchange, I won't pursue criminal charges. I won't release the documents. I won't destroy what little remains of your reputation." I slid the paper across the table, but the financial consequences stand. You owe me $7.4 million in debt that I now control. You have 30 days to pay it in full. If you can't, and we both know you can't, I will foreclose on every asset you own, the mansion, the company, everything. Derek stood up abruptly. "This isn't legal. You can't just—" "Sit down, Derek." He sat. "You spent 7 years treating me like an ATM. 7 years pretending to love me while planning to steal everything I earned. 7 years sleeping with my assistant while smiling at me across the breakfast table." I held up the Montblanc pen. His pen. My pen. "You gave me this as an anniversary gift. Actually, I bought it for you for our first anniversary. but you've never paid for anything in your life, so you probably don't remember. He stared at the pen like it was a weapon. I'm going to use this pen to sign the documents that take everything from you. Every asset, every penny, every shred of the privileged life you thought you deserved. I smiled. And then I'm going to use it to sign the birth certificate of our child. The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Derek's face went blank. What? I'm pregnant, Derek. 16 weeks. Found out the same day you threw my bags on the sidewalk. You can't be. I have the ultrasound images, the doctor's confirmation, the due date in October. I placed my hand on my stomach, the slight curve now visible beneath my blazer. You're going to be a father. Congratulations. Derek looked like he might vomit. This changes things, Patricia said quickly. If there's a child involved, we need to discuss custody, support. There's nothing to discuss. I'm filing for full custody the moment the divorce is finalized. Given the documented history of fraud and conspiracy, no judge in Texas will grant Derek visitation rights. He'll be lucky if he gets supervised visits once a month. I looked at my husband. You wanted to take everything from me. You're going to lose everything instead, including any chance of knowing your own child. Victoria, please. Derek's voice broke. I made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But a baby? That's different. That's our child. It's my child. You forfeited any claim when you spent 8 years planning to destroy me. I can change. I can be better. Just give me a chance. You had 7 years of chances. 7 years of me believing you, trusting you, loving you while you lied to my face every single day. I stood up. Sign the confession, all 3 of you. You have 5 minutes. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. Behind me, I heard the rustle of paper, whispered arguments, Courtney crying softly. I heard Patricia's voice, low and furious, telling Derek to think about what he was doing. I heard Derek's broken response that there was nothing to think about, that it was over. One by one, they signed. Courtney first, her signature a shaky scrawl. Derek next, his hand trembling so badly the pen slipped twice. And finally Patricia, her signature precise and controlled even in defeat. I turned around, collected the documents, and placed them in the folder. Your belongings will be removed from my house by the end of the week. You'll receive formal notice of foreclosure on all properties within 30 days. The shareholders meeting this afternoon will vote to remove Patricia Sanders as CEO of Sanders Capital Partners and install new management. Who? Patricia asked bitterly. You? I'm busy. I smiled. But I've hired excellent people. The company will survive, just not under your control. I walked toward the door, then paused. One more thing. Derek. He looked up, hope flickering briefly in his eyes, as if there might still be mercy, still be some escape. The pen, I said. Consider it returned. I set the Mont Blanc on the table in front of him. You can use it to sign the papers when you lose everything. Think of me. I left them there in the conference room, surrounded by the wreckage of their conspiracy. As I walked through the lobby, I passed the receptionist who had tried to direct me to wait earlier. She was staring at her computer screen, watching the real-time stock ticker as Sanders Capital Part. The baby came in October, 3 weeks early, on a Tuesday morning when the autumn sun was just beginning to warm the Houston skyline. Her name was Eleanor Grace Sanders Mitchell. I gave her my mother's name and took back my own. She was born at 6:47 a.m., weighing 6 pounds 4 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and her father's nose. I held her in my arms in the delivery room, exhausted and exhilarated, and made her a promise. You will never doubt that you are loved, I whispered. You will never wonder if people want you for what you can give them. You will grow up knowing your worth, and no one will ever take that from you. Sam was there. Martin Cole sent flowers that filled half the room. My mother flew in from Connecticut and cried for an hour straight while holding her granddaughter. Derek was not there. He had requested to be present for the birth. His lawyer sent a formal letter citing paternal rights and emotional bonding and the importance of early childhood attachment. I had my lawyer send back a single-page response outlining the terms of our divorce settlement. Derek could see Eleanor for 2 supervised hours per month at a location of my choosing, with a court-appointed monitor present. If he violated any term of the agreement, he would lose even that. He had signed the settlement without argument. He had no leverage left to argue with. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks before Eleanor was born. Under the terms Patricia had tried to use against me, the higher-earning spouse owed the other party nothing, because Derek had signed a valid prenup acknowledging that all assets acquired during marriage remained separate property. His lawyers had discovered the forgery too late. The original document they thought would give them $400 million turned out to give them nothing at all. Derek walked away from 7 years of marriage with exactly what he had brought into it. Nothing. Patricia fared no better. The foreclosure on the Sanders mansion closed in September. I had purchased the property at auction for $2.8 million, a fraction of its value, but no one else was bidding. The banks that had given Patricia her loans were happy to be made whole. They didn't ask questions about the buyer. I donated the mansion to the Houston Area Women's Center. They converted it into transitional housing for women escaping domestic abuse and financial exploitation. The Patricia Sanders Ballroom was renamed the Survivors Gallery. I attended the dedication ceremony with Eleanor in my arms. Patricia herself moved to a small apartment in Katy, supported by Social Security and the kindness of distant relatives. I heard through Sam that she spent most of her days watching television and refusing to discuss what had happened. The woman who had orchestrated an 8-year conspiracy to steal my life was now living on $1,800 a month and eating frozen dinners alone. I felt nothing about this. Not satisfaction, not pity, nothing. Courtney disappeared. She had honored our agreement, giving her deposition in exchange for immunity from prosecution, and then vanished. Last I heard, she was somewhere in California, using a different name, trying to start over. I hoped she would. I hoped she would find something real to build her life around, something other than lies and stolen money. But that was her journey, not mine. Sanders Capital Partners survived, barely. Under new management, a team I had personally selected, the company stabilized, then slowly began to grow. I remained the majority shareholder but stayed off the board. I had no interest in running another company. I had enough to run already. Because while all of this was happening, I was building something else. Victory Ventures launched on New Year's Day, 3 months after Eleanor was born. It was a venture capital fund focused on women-owned businesses. The thesis was simple. Women entrepreneurs were dramatically underfunded, receiving less than 3% of all VC investment, despite delivering better returns on average. I intended to change that. The initial fund was $200 million of my own money. Within 6 months, I had raised another $300 million from institutional investors who saw the opportunity in the data. By Eleanor's first birthday, Victory Ventures had invested in 47 companies across Texas, California, and New York. One of those companies was a startup developing financial literacy programs for women leaving abusive relationships. Another was creating technology to help detect forged signatures on legal documents. A third was building a platform to help women track and protect their assets during divorce proceedings. I had turned my pain into purpose. Forbes put me on the cover in March. The $500 million divorce that built an empire, the headline read. I gave one interview, explaining what had happened to me and why I had channeled my resources into helping other women. I was lucky, I told the reporter. I had the money and the expertise to fight back. Most women in my situation don't. They sign unfair settlements because they can't afford better lawyers. They lose their homes because they don't understand their rights. They walk away from marriages with nothing because their husbands controlled all the finances. I had looked directly into the camera. I want to change that. Every woman should have the tools to protect herself. The interview went viral. My email filled with messages from women sharing their own stories. Some were still trapped in bad marriages. Some had escaped but lost everything. Some were just starting out and wanted advice on protecting themselves. I read every single one. And I responded. On the anniversary of the day, I found my bags on the sidewalk. I sat in my office on the 63rd floor of the Williams Tower, looking out at the city where I had been destroyed and reborn. Eleanor was in her carrier on my desk, sleeping peacefully. She had learned to smile the week before, and I had approximately 400 photos on my phone to prove it. On the desk beside her was a letter, the latest investment proposal for Victory Ventures. a company building AI-powered tools to help women detect financial abuse patterns in their relationships. I picked up the pen to sign the approval. The Mont Blanc. I had kept it after all. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. A reminder of who I had been and who I had become. A reminder that the same pen that had signed away my happiness had also signed the documents that built my empire. I thought about Derek in his small apartment, working as a sales representative for a company that sold industrial supplies. I thought about Patricia in her lonely retirement, surrounded by memories of the dynasty she had destroyed through her own greed. I thought about Courtney, wherever she was, trying to escape the consequences of her choices. And I thought about me, about the woman who had walked out of her own house with nothing but a pen and a broken heart, about the mother holding her daughter while building something that would outlast them both, about the signature at the bottom of every document that proved what I had learned, that the best revenge is living well, but the best victory is helping others live better. Eleanor stirred in her carrier, opening her eyes to look up at me with that pure, uncomplicated trust that only babies have. "Hey, sweet girl," I said softly. "Want to see Mommy sign something important?" She made a sound that I chose to interpret as yes. I touched the pen to the paper and wrote my name. Victoria Mitchell. Not Sanders anymore. Not anyone's wife. Just me. The signature was clean. Confident. Final. I looked at Eleanor. At the city beyond the window. At the letter that would fund another company helping women protect themselves. "This is how you write your own ending," I told my daughter. "One signature at a time." She smiled. And so did I.